This is Money Made Simple, the financial podcast that keeps it simple and gets to the point.
Welcome to our very first episode of Money Made Simple. I'm Liv.
Hi, I'm Jennie.
And we are part of the marketing and comms team at Simplicity. Today we'll go over a little bit about Simplicity, what we're all about, provide a bit of background around ourselves and why we are talking to you today, and then around why we started this podcast, why we think it's really important. Let's start with who Simplicity is and what it's all about. Jennie, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. So Simplicity is a non-profit KiwiSaver and investment fund manager. It all started back in 2016. Sam Stubbs had been working in the finance industry for a long time. He had had a very successful career, but he stopped and thought, what could I do with my life that would help more people? I'm doing really well, but how could I help others do well? And he decided that the thing he could do that would have the biggest impact on the most Kiwis was start a non-profit, low-fee KiwiSaver scheme. He saw that as a way of helping people save for their future and have a better retirement. So he sat down with some friends. Apparently they sat around a kitchen table with a napkin and a pen, and they planned out this thing that became Simplicity. The mission of Simplicity is to make Kiwis a little bit richer and a little bit smarter with money. And that's a key reason why we started this podcast. Today, we're an organisation of 25 plus staff. We've got 144,000 KiwiSaver and investment fund members, and we have $5.2 billion funds under management. That's Simplicity.
So maybe we chat a little bit about who we are, what our roles are at Simplicity. Liv, you go first.
Cool. So I am Liv, obviously. I am the head of marketing at Simplicity. I'm 37. I've only been with Simplicity for about 9 months now, and I didn't actually come from the financial industry before that. Although, to be fair, I've always been really, really interested in finances and the financial industry. So it was something that I always knew was in my future. But obviously, about 9 months ago was the time that it was right for me. So I grew up in Auckland on the North Shore. I had a father who had his own business, a dental business, a fairly successful one. And so I was taught very early on about budgeting and money and finances. Very strict parents, to be fair. I was made to buy my own clothes from when I was about 14 based on the pocket money or allowance that I got. So I think very luckily for me, I had good financial habits and values instilled in me from very, very young, which means I've always been super disciplined and ambitious with money. Hence, I've been kind of quite interested and practicing investment at a bit younger age than a lot of my friends. So yeah, I would say that I've probably been fairly good with money from very early on. I own my own house, actually, a couple of houses with my husband. I started out my investing journey with housing back in my late 20s, and we also own our house in Auckland, and we also have an investment property in Christchurch and one that's going to settle in Auckland early next year. As soon as Sharesies started, not as soon as it did, but quite early on with Sharesies, I started an account there and started investing very soon before the COVID pandemic. I found it quite an opportune time to start investing, which has actually, funnily enough, very much benefited me. And I don't think that's from skill, that's just from pure luck. So anyway, I don't come from the financial industry, but super, super interested in it and have been lucky to know about it really early on. So yeah, a really significant thing for me is that I have quite big ambitions to retire or be able to retire and be financially independent by 50. I know that's a really big goal, but being so disciplined and I guess working in the industry and knowing a lot about it now, I know that my goals will very likely get me there. But yeah, I'd say I'm probably a not experienced but very ambitious financial personality. How about you, Jennie? Tell me a bit about your slightly different background.
Yeah,
with
I feel
finances.
like I'm the complete opposite to you. So I am the head of communications and education at Simplicity. I've been here for a few years now, but I also don't have a financial background. So I come from the charity sector and originally started working for the Simplicity Foundation, which I'm sure we'll talk to you more about in the future. But I've been working in this role for a few years. Prior to this, I had zero interest in finance. Literally none at all. I would save enough money in my fairly humble charity salary and enough to travel or do some more study. So I would save and spend and save and spend. I had no interest in saving long term. I'm also married and I have 2 kids and 2 pets, and we've just bought our first home. So we are starting to make some more longer term sort of decisions. But I'm the sort of person that generally glazes over when you talk, like when my husband wants to talk about refixing mortgage rates, my mind goes somewhere else.
My favourite topic.
So Liv and I are quite complementary in that we get on very well, but we come from quite different perspectives. My parents probably are the reason I'm like this, in that my dad made a good salary, but they weren't long-term thinkers about money either. So we went on great holidays and they built houses, but they weren't good savers, sort of long-term savers. So yeah, I think I am just the same, but I am trying really hard to talk about money differently with my own children. Not that I'm blaming you, Mum and Dad. And that's a really conscious decision on our part to talk about money and to have them thinking about, how they spend and their wants versus needs, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think both of us are, I would say, in different parts in our financial journeys. I'm never going to be retiring early. Like there's just no way that's going to happen. But I'm okay with that. But I would like others, and that's why we're here today, to be able to retire when we want and live the life that we want to have at that age. We're going to have much longer retirements than previous generations. We could retire and live for another 20, 30 years. So if you want that to be a good 20, 30 years, the earlier you start thinking about that, the better. So I'm really glad to be here sharing what I have learned.
Cool. So
yeah.
In a nutshell, we're quite different, but hopefully I can say both lovely humans with personal opinions that may differ sometimes, some expertise. I mean, we work in the industry and plenty of real world experience, including a healthy dose of lessons and mistakes as we go. So why did we decide to make a podcast? I mean, there's heaps out there, right?
Yeah, there are plenty. I listen to lots of them, but I think what we want to do is create something a bit more bite-sized, something that people can listen to on their way to work or while they're hanging out a load of washing, and just really go back to basics, look at some of these key concepts and ideas that get thrown around. If you don't understand what something means, then the whole thing doesn't make sense to you. So yeah, we want to go back to those basics, cover them quickly and concisely, and hopefully bring you along with us as we're learning and as well.
Yeah, so we'll cover the basics around money, finances, investing, KiwiSaver, all of that good stuff. We also welcome any requests, but basically we want to simplify and explain the jargon. We'll chat with some experts along the way and share our own experiences, ups and downs, stuff we've learnt, and likely learn a whole lot more along the way.
Hope so, yes. And probably important to note why we've called this Money Made Simple. If you already know Simplicity, you've heard of us before, you might have read a book that our managing director Sam Stubbs wrote last year called Money Made Simple. He's really passionate about talking to people about the simple truths and the sort of golden rules, as he calls them, of money. He thinks it doesn't matter how much money you make, there are still some things that everybody can do that'll make a big difference to them now and in the long term. So he wrote this book. It's designed to be read in one sitting that cover these sort of like really simple ideas. So we thought, yep, that's great. We love the title. We love what he's trying to do, but maybe it would be good to talk about it. So that's what we're doing. Yeah.
So I know, having obviously read the book, that the first simple truth is that we should all talk more about money.
Yes, you are right. That is the first simple truth in the book. And really the key reason we've decided to make this podcast. We want to talk about money. We want you to talk about money. So that's why we're here. Kiwis are quite bad at talking about money. We find it impolite and a little bit awkward. There's other parts of the world, I mean, you think about America, where they will quite happily have a loud conversation about the salary raise they're asking for at the supermarket counter. But Kiwis are not like that. But we don't need to talk about our salaries, but we can talk more about money. If you are managing a household budget, putting petrol in a car, buying groceries, any of these things, you probably know more about money and managing money than you think.
Absolutely.
And so sharing the things that you've learned along the way, the mistakes that you've made with your friends, your whānau, your children especially, is a really good way to get those conversations going. So we want to talk honestly about money, and we want you to start doing that with your families as well.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, the more that we talk honestly to whatever level that we're comfortable with and share our experiences and learnings, the better. I mean, that's exactly part of that saying, knowledge equals power. You know, it's so important to learn from, not just learn from yourself, but learn from others. And that's what talking about it can do.
And I think about myself just a few years ago, and a lot of the decisions I made were just from a place of ignorance. Like I genuinely didn't think I was smart enough to be an investor, or that I made enough money to think about the future. But the things that I've learned since working for Simplicity have taught me the opposite. Actually, it doesn't matter. Everyone can be an investor. You don't have to be investing millions to still, securing your future. So Absolutely. I wish I had talked more about it before, but I'm here now, and I'm keen to chat.
And I think that's something with, as I talked before about my background, my parents were really hot on talking about money to us and us talking about money, and that's something that I guess from a point of being younger and more informed that has, I think, helped me. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect or haven't made mistakes along the way, but I know that it's something that I really, really appreciate about my upbringing. So I hope that kids talk about it more going forward. I think from my understanding that it's being talked about more and brought more into the education system now than when, I guess, a long time ago when we were kids.
Yeah, there's definitely some great organisations out there that are starting to work at primary school and high school levels. It's still a little bit of a luck thing, whether you have a teacher that's interested in bringing that into the classroom or whether you study the right subjects. So I didn't say in my introduction to myself that I'm a country girl, so I grew up in a small town, went to a rural school, and we didn't have all subjects taught at school. There's probably still schools around. We're in Auckland here, and so most of the schools probably have a really broad range of subjects that they're teaching, but it shouldn't be a matter of luck. You shouldn't only learn about money if you live in a city and miss out if you live elsewhere. So, but I do think, that's really improving, and things like Sharesies and other investment platforms are really great at introducing that kind of thing to young people. You don't need a lot of money to get in. You can have a little play around, and there's just a lot more content out there. There's other great podcasts. There's lots of, great educational information online. So I think future generations are going to be in a
so much luckier.
Stronger,
we had to walk to school through the snow backwards, right?
With no coat
for us.
And no shoes. Yes, and they also have KiwiSaver, and that's something we're definitely going to be talking about quite a lot in this podcast.
So outtakes are talk about money more. Whether you are young or old, it can only really help discussing things, learning from each other. We know we need to talk more about money. Next week, we're going to be covering the basics of the KiwiSaver scheme. So what it is, why it's come about, how it was established and when. So looking forward to next week. But thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tune in next week.
Thanks, everyone.
This podcast contains personal opinions and is intended to provide educational information only. It doesn't relate to your particular financial situation or goals and is not financial advice or recommendations. Simplicity New Zealand Limited is the issuer of the Simplicity KiwiSaver scheme and investment funds. For product disclosure statements, please visit Simplicity's website, simplicity.kiwi.